There are too many organizations out there, I think, that have put in larger minimums for and focus it basically on, I'm not going to look at you as a person you are, but I'm looking at how much money
The
you have
portfolio
in your
size.
bank account. Yeah,
Right.
investable assets. So if you meet my minimum, I will help you. If you don't, then thanks
You want,
for at least asking the question. You don't
yeah,
qualify.
yeah.
And
Which
those are the
particularly,
people who need the help the most.
hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the show. Stuart Bell here, and today joined by Terry George. Terry, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, very good. Thanks for having me on, Stuart.
Pleasure. This is going to be an interesting show because for people who follow along episode by episode, yesterday as we record, but a couple of weeks ago as we release, we had a conversation with your colleague John Becker. So for people who are following along, this is going to be your perspective of a similar model. So I'm really excited to share some of this information because I think getting two people's perspective on two separate shows is really going to help people kind of fill in the gaps for their own idea of, hey, we know this knowledge, we share this stuff with people all the time, but how can we kind of bundle it together in a package that's useful? So why don't we start with a bit of background? You and John have worked together for a while. Give us, for people who are just joining into this show, not the last one, give us a bit of background on what the company does and then maybe how you guys met and started working together.
Well, I've been an advisor for 22 years now, and I have different experiences from different companies along the way. And that experience has helped me get a better understanding of how things should work, not staying in the same track and doing the same thing over and over again. But I met John as I wanted to move from Minnesota, where I also have an office, to Florida. And in that process, I liked this area of Florida, the Space Coast, where John's office is. And so I was able to connect with him because we were both with Prudential, and I was able to look him up and see whether it would make sense for us to meet up. And we hit it off right away. I think from that standpoint of how we thought, what our goals were, what we were trying to accomplish, and also the thought was we can do more together and
Right.
building more of a team. At least that was the theory of it, of me coming in and working with him. And he was open to it because he thought it would also add value, as it's hard to do a lot on your own without having someone to springboard off of or work with or take some of the workload off, to help serve clients.
Yeah.
And when I got down here to Florida, we began to think about putting together a DBA name, a company that we could brand under and create that brand so we could market ourselves in a different way. Just tell our story the way we want to tell in a deeper way. And so that clients these days, we understand that if they're trying to investigate a firm to work with, well, I would just like you probably will turn to the internet and
Right. That's the first
try
point
to
of
find a
everything.
website. Yeah, try to learn about them, try to find out their philosophies or their process or cost or how they work. And if you can't find that, then you're really at a disadvantage. And both and I and John had been involved in different groups before, different names and had websites. But currently with Prudential, neither one of us had that. It's just that you are a Prudential advisor. And
Right.
Prudential went through a lot of changes as they were then merged with LPL on the brokerage side. So with all those changes, we thought it'd be a perfect time for us to reinvent ourselves and form a group that we can build upon and starting that with that brand. So as he mentioned that to me and we talked about it, and I said that I've got it all set up. I've got the name, I've got the logo, I've got everything. And so
All
when I
ready to
showed it
go.
to him, yeah. And it was just a matter of an ideas that I've had for a while now to implement this, and that's why I had it created. And John liked it. He liked Clearview Wealth Management, and for the same reason that I worked with some other team members in the past to come up with that is with the thought process that I was sitting around having a brainstorming session and says, we want to have something that helps give clients a clear view of their
Right.
future. And then it just kind of went together, Clearview. So we thought that was fitting. There's some I guess some marketing that we can do. There happens to be a telescope in the logo as you're looking out for that clear view, and being in the Space Coast, it kind of fits in with what we're
Yeah,
doing as we're looking outward and upward. And so that's why we
that's
hope our clients, many can grow upward and outward.
sometimes an idea comes to you and you just like it, but it doesn't necessarily stick together at every level. What I really love about the name and the location is that it does work on so many levels for you guys, particularly. It's kind of does what it says on the tin, and then there's the local connection with Space Coast. Works really well.
Yeah, and after that, we got rolling on putting some things together, and it is a process, but we're able to connect with other advisors and bring them in and have them all join our group to strengthen that. And so I think the whole process then, beyond just John and I thinking that we can be backups for each other and help us strengthen what we do, we have created an environment where there's systems, we have experts in different areas, so that together we are able to really spread out that workload and feed off of ideas for what we're doing and dialogue with each other on financial planning concepts, and almost like a consultation of a group of doctors coming together for a patient.
Right.
Here's the situation. What should we do with this person as we're working on planning design and creating investment portfolio designs?
It's such an
So we've
interesting
got a
point,
lot of
isn't it?
ideas.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
that's the benefit. Again, we were talking with just recording with John yesterday. It's difficult for me not to just bounce off that conversation because obviously, as people are listening, it was a few weeks ago. But we did talk yesterday about this idea of the execution of things now is not quite table stakes because not everyone's at that same execution level, but it's getting closer and closer as the technology improves. It's almost like the table stakes of everyone assumes you can do the thing. But your ability to add value and the personalization and the understanding of the client situation, I think you guys have got an interesting perspective on that because you have this kind of almost like triage approach. I think yesterday we were talking about again the medical idea, like the general practitioner or the lead consultant, then bringing in the experts. So was that something that's developed over time, this specialization as different people have joined the practice, it's opened up that ability, or did you go looking for
Yeah, I
particular
think
things?
that was the thought process. If there was a gap, just like let's talk to these advisors because I think they're doing that. And so we were able to then, both geographically, see if it made sense. And as we were having those conversations, it made sense to the other advisors just as much as it did to us. Why don't we work together?
Right.
That way we can do more than what we could do on our own. And so I think the standalone scenario of what small advisor practices that they had with this, the prudential advisors, was a little bit more customary. They're trying to get more into teams now. But I think with the whole development of a growing team that uses their own brand building, I think that takes it to a whole nother level. And so
Yeah.
that's where we want to go.
It's interesting. There is a corollary with the kind of real estate idea. We've got something of a footprint with real estate agents and their team approach. Until you just said it, it wasn't really something that I thought about before, but there is definitely a greater level of success with we see across the board with teams who can offer that specialization in different properties or different services or the diversity of skills that they can bring, which I don't think I've seen necessarily in the financial advisor space because it does tend to be, at least to the extent that we've seen it, and we probably have done 200 financial
Mhm.
advisor books maybe over the years, but it definitely seems to be either big company or medium-sized company or independent person. The idea of the specialist teams that or the teams that sit in between those two things, somewhat unique, I think, in the approach.
Yeah, yeah, we really are dividing up the services, those types of things. If somebody needs something, we're bringing in that advisor as opposed to one advisor trying to pull it off on their own
Right,
and having team meetings and with a client.
right. And then bringing in the people as and when you need them, kind of playing up the
Yep,
team for
right.
the discipline that's needed.
Yeah. And I
I think
think the
that
big thing is, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that then ties nicely in with the idea that we talk about here, this kind of amplified expert idea, because I think so many times people get a little bit caught up in the idea that, okay, if I'm going to write a book, if I'm going to share my expertise, I need to absolutely know every single piece of it. And you almost get wrapped up in the academic book building side of things. Like it's going to be peer reviewed or validated, or you've got to own the whole piece. But I think increasingly, the person who can quarterback the overall job for the client, but isn't necessarily the person doing all the work, and that might be in team or out of team. But the idea that you understand the problems and you can talk to the problems, even if you're not definitely not pretending to provide the answer or even not providing the answer, but at least being aware of how all of the blocks stick together. So it's not working in isolation, say, well, I only do this and everything else is out of scope, so you're on your own. But kind of within that sphere of influence, being the person that
Right.
at least talks about
Yeah.
it.
And I think the reason why that works so well is we all have a shared passion, a passion that we want that end result for that client to be successful, and that we can measure and track the progress of that success over time. And so, but we can see it initially as we are trying to either repair a situation or head them in the right direction through new strategies and show them choices of
Right.
what they can do to fix it. Now, we always look at it, there's more than one way possibly for some of our clients to be successful. And maybe they'd be successful on their own. But they still don't know. And a lot of times that clarity piece isn't there for them. And so part of our process is to help them live their best life. It's like, what do they want to accomplish? What do they want to leave behind? If that's an important thing too, to spend a lot of time on that estate planning piece of it to make sure their legacy is well intact for their wishes. And so we want to bring our own passions into what we orchestrate and create and analyze, and then have that awakening moment of saying, this is
Right.
what we found. So yes, they could be successful perhaps, but if they do A, B, or C, one option may resonate more with them for their value system. One option may resonate more for them with how their net worth turns out 10 years down the road if they take one path versus the other. And so with that, it helps them solidify that track that they want to be on for that strategy to say, yep, that's what I want. This is what I want to accomplish. Thank you for helping show me that path.
And being able to talk to people like that and have the 22 years, the expertise that you've got across a broad suite of examples, I think that's the main difference that people, that's a key thing that people forget sometimes when they're thinking about sharing their knowledge. There's really this idea, particularly if you've been in the business for a long time, that we're going in at a high level. We're talking about the complicated situations, the edge cases, the it depends, which is true when you're actually talking to someone one on one and working out the solution. But when you start in that conversation, it's often the basic questions and the things that we take for granted as the experts, but the customers don't quite understand. So when you were bringing the book together, thinking about the concepts that were in there, was that a conversation that you and John had? Like, what level of information do we want to share? What's the pressing questions that people have got that will resonate with this
Yeah,
content?
we had all these ideas floating around in our heads, and I think I'm more of for years I've been more of an academician, and I've collected all these things that are floating around, and some of these concepts and just terminology that and sayings that I have, just wanted to flow out, and we wanted to be able to hit on those key things because we've seen enough people make mistakes that they don't pay attention to it, or it's amazing how many people that the questions they ask afterwards or when we're meeting with them that if they come in as prospects, they just don't understand this stuff or pay attention to it. And that could be another thing. It's a combination, I think, sometimes, and sometimes if we go through a bad stretch in the market, when some people just say, it's just so negative, I can't even look at it. So then they vary themselves from reality of some of the maybe things they could be doing or should be considering. And they just go through and the years go by, and all of a sudden they're close to retirement and they don't know where they're at.
And
And
the
that's been
window of
often the
options are
case.
narrowing. Right.
Yeah, their options are narrowing. And I think that's often the case is people get to the point where they say, I'm going to retire next year. I hope I'm okay. But I haven't. So we hope that this book with these ideas, not that they're too difficult. I think we designed it so it's fairly easy to read. And so we
Yeah.
wanted to get it out in the hands of people. I mean, we assume that some people, not everyone, cares about getting information, but there are people who do. And if they do, and they're beginning to think about it, provide a resource that may add value to them ahead of time, whether it's 5 or 10 years before retirement, to start thinking about some of those concepts in preparation for that day when work becomes optional. And so we try to, I mean, in reality, we could have made it a lot longer, but
Right.
but it becomes a little bit overwhelming for someone. So we had to just come back to some basics and say these are
I
the
think
areas that we often find people concerned with or caught up in that maybe they should start with. And we put some lists together, some checklists that are associated with the book that are people can get as a separate download they can find on our website. We put it there is like which will help kind of narrow that scope of these same concepts, but in a very much streamlined way to get at them.
that's such a great point. That idea of it could keep going and going, particularly when we've been in business for any number of years. I mean, we can probably keep going until someone turns the lights off on us. But
Yeah.
making the right fit for the right purpose, giving enough information that it's adding value, knowing that the next step is out of the pages of the book. It is actually something that we deal with quite a lot. People wanting, actually, it's funny, we either get two ends of the spectrum. One is people wanting to hold back information because they don't want to give their secrets away. And the other spectrum is, okay, we need to dial it in a little bit because you're losing people. Like, keep going. This
Mhm.
is multiple books. This is a conversation starting piece. You need to give people enough to move on to the next step. And the next step is most of the time outside of the pages of the book. So that was an interesting balance that you guys were striking between what's the engaging information on the page to get the conversation
Right.
going, and then here's the next step. One next step is a
Mhm.
meeting, another next step is a checklist, another next step is consuming more information. So did that tie in and marry up with your existing approach? Did you already have some of those checklists and things that you would use as handouts or additional material for people, or did you create them specifically as part of this project?
I mean, we had some of it, but I think we dialed it in and for just this project to say if we're going to put this book together, let's streamline this and say, how does it align with the book, right? So we want to
Right.
make sure that the checklist were also things that we talked about in the book to get out there and people literally can check it off, you know. So you're right, it's kind of interesting about giving the secrets away and and we didn't really want to hold back those concepts because that's the concepts we want to communicate.
Right.
And if we do that effectively, hopefully people though, I mean, there could be some people that say that's all I want to get out of it. And I understand that, but they're still not getting their questions answered for their personal calculations, their personal outlook, and or what they should invest in, you know,
Yeah.
and how much risk are they taking on. So there's a lot of details yet that I think that the value from the ongoing relationship will be very important for those near retirees to work with a financial advisor. And we hope to that they would call upon us as well if we can be of assistance to them in that process.
That's the truth, isn't it? I mean, we joked slightly a second ago saying the answer to most things is it depends for any of us who are in a kind of consultative service-based business. If it's not just buying something at a checkout, then the answer is usually it depends. And for those people who are worried about giving the secrets away, I mean, that ship sailed years ago, really, but definitely in the last year. I mean, 2 seconds on a LLM type chatbot, and you'll get all of the
Yeah,
answers you could possibly
get the
want.
answers right.
It's yeah,
So
but
it's
not the
about building
personalization.
trust.
Exactly, that trust, understanding the detail, the nuance, that's the piece that is important and the moat going forward, which I think ties back to your original point that you were saying coming together with John and having the opportunity to build a brand and a presence and a way of doing things together in a particular area. That's the opportunity that the book supports. It's this is who we are and what we do. And if that resonates with you as a potential customer, then hey, we're a good match, come in. Yeah. I think
Right.
that idea of there's a right match and some people aren't a right match, and that's fine. Do you have a strong feeling for who it is that you work well with? Is there a certain type of person, or are they coming from a certain perspective that really resonates with what you guys do?
Well, that's an interesting question about finding that niche, of who is the best type of fit. And for me, I would say I've had a lot of engineer clients over the years, and I know maybe sometimes that they're deep thinkers, examine a lot of things. And so I've been able to step up and provide some a level of support for them for what they're looking for. And so I actually enjoy working with some of that, whether they're that engineering brain mentality, mathematics
Mm.
is important to kind of do the analysis work because they do it all the time on their own jobs. So
Yeah.
it's like it kind of fits with me in the passion I have for financial planning as a puzzle solver. Let's look through that and create these options for you. And they get it. Most of them that I found is that area. They do care. There are other niches out there, that need help, and I'm not opposed to helping anyone who really comes through the doors and says, I want to prepare for retirement. But we can try to find, business owners too, is small business owners is an area that we want to focus on because they have their unique needs and challenges facing them. And usually it's all
Yeah.
onto them. They've taken on a lot of risk over their lifetime. We can maybe try to help take some of that away through adding clarity, in processes and
Yeah.
systems. And if they do that over enough period of time, we can start to diversify some of that risk away so they have things outside of their business and it's not all dependent
All
on
the eggs in
their
one.
one asset. Yeah.
Right.
So that's just I think an area just because of generally caring, and I may help the 63-year-old widow who just doesn't know what to do next.
Yeah.
There's a need that, or people just went through a divorce, and just are struggling about how do they can put things together. There's many situations like that they may have some money in a 401k, but they just haven't done a good job because they haven't understand it. And the whole concept is people end up doing what they know, and they learn
Mm.
about financial planning or money management based on what their experiences were, what they learned from their parents. And if their parents didn't do it, typically the cycle repeats
Yeah.
that's what they feel comfortable with, and that's what they do.
They haven't had
So,
any exposure to it.
um, yeah, exactly. So our job, I mean, amongst the different niches and different groups of people is to help them. But I do find that the engineers, sometimes they have a base knowledge of things already. And so I can kind of get beyond that and we can just start implementing a little bit more of the more thoughtful strategy process of
Yeah.
that. And
That way that you were describing it, I mean, again, having done 13, close to 1,300 books now, it is everyone goes through the same kind of mental cycle of, well, we could help anyone because it's a service that's applicable to anyone. So we could help it. We like working with these people, but then these people we can help as well. And that kind of, you can always see the mental path that people go through of kind of going narrow and then wide and narrow and then wide. And the reinsurance point that I always make to people is, no one's saying turn anyone away. This is just you've got 10 units of outbound activity. You might as well focus that on the people who you resonate with and resonate with you. Again, not turning anyone else. If the outbound activity is around engineers, because that's the language that you like, that's great. If a housewife widow comes in who has never had any engineering background, there's no way you're going to turn them away. You can absolutely help them in exactly the same way. Effort that you've got to do the outbound work, it's
right.
finite. And if you try and do everything, then you're not really talking to anyone. So just for that campaign, you might as well talk in the language that resonates the best.
Sure. And we understand we want to focus on certain areas, but we may get referrals from
Right.
some other people you meet along the way.
Yeah.
For example, I just met a lady at a church who said, I'm getting close to retire. I just don't know whether I can do it or when I can retire. Can you help me? Well, yes, I can help go through that. And so it's not necessarily somebody that I'm marketing to, but it's that caring
Absolutely
and
something you can
compassion
help.
and passion to be able to
Yeah.
step in and go, yeah, let's put something together for you. And really, it can change these people's lives. They become so, I guess, at peace when they have that peace of
Right.
mind and thankful that someone has given them some time. There are too many organizations out there, I think, that have put in larger minimums
Mm.
for and focus it basically on, I'm not going to look at you as the person you are, but I'm looking at how much money
The
you have
portfolio
in your
size.
bank account. Yeah,
Right.
investable assets. So if you meet my minimum, I will help you. If you don't, then thanks
Yeah.
for at least asking the question. You don't
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah.
And
Which
those are the
particularly,
people who need the help the most.
right. Yeah. And it's particularly if we've got a geographic footprint, if everything's online and you're actually face to face with people, then okay, there's a bit of a distance and a separation. But when you're in a local area or church or a friend group or that face to face with someone, it's very difficult to, well, for us who have got some kind of compassion for people, it's very difficult to not give a valid answer and try and help as much as possible. I guess for some people it's easier than others.
Yep.
But that idea that this is a broadly applicable service, and even if
But
it's not
yep.
exactly a match, it's
Right. And but with that being said, I mean, just bringing that up, there is something, an idea that we may want to help people. Again, with this whole, the concepts of preparing for retirement is that whole faith community, is whether you can get some inroads with decision makers to let us come in and give a presentation, your talk, you can go
yeah,
over these concepts and it may be well received because it's something that can bring groups together, that whether they're part of an association, and you get some credibility when it comes from some leadership saying, hey, we're bringing these people in, then they other than just us, that they will
right.
look at that leadership to say, oh, okay, all right, I'm going to sit down and come to this event, or I'm going to come to this presentation and listen to it. And I need it anyway. I
Yeah.
might find value out
I
of that.
think there's that element of what's the best way to describe it? We sometimes get people coming and saying, hey, I've done a presentation from stage for years. Can I just magically turn that into a book? And we used to try and do it occasionally in the early days, but since learned a lesson. And I mean, the answer is that's fantastic supporting material, and that means that you know the stuff, but we need to create it fit for purpose from the start. Otherwise, we're trying to jam a somewhat square-shaped peg into a book-shaped hole, and it's just going to be clunky. On the faith-based approach that you mentioned, going into an organization and just delivering the standard presentation to that group, okay, there's going to be some crossover because it's universally applicable to a certain degree. But if you were to
Mhm.
take the time to do the presentation that was entirely faith-based, so each of the
Mhm.
examples is talking to what that group of people are interested in and their perspective, why they're looking for a different answer, there's something tangible and intangible about the effort that you take to understand their problems and actually thoughtfully think about what some good information might be for them, which I think
Right.
telegraphs through in that presentation. And everyone there is more open to receive it and more thankful or grateful for the time and attention you've put into it to tailor it for that group. So I really think
Right.
that particularly anything emotional, I mean, there's something more of an emotional connection with that group of people than there would be just going into a workplace environment and talking to the 55 plus cohort in that workplace. It's more of a human
Mhm.
connection, and I think
Yeah,
that's a
the
big opportunity.
connections, right.
Mm.
So I think that we wrote the book to be able to help people as such as groups, and I think that is a nice way to do it, to be able to find some connection like that for
Yeah,
different groups and to see how we can help them. And in reality is we have the abilities and the resources and the team to handle a lot of expertise and a lot of complex and a lot of high net worth things as well. And whether someone needs, tax reduction strategies, or which is big, for
yeah,
scenarios. And so that, or some complex state work strategy that is in alignment with what they're trying to accomplish. So we welcome the opportunity to help all different people. And I think that's what we pride ourselves on, and not necessarily paint ourselves into a box as an advisory team and say, well, I will only work with this people. I'm only
right,
targeting, a certain profession. Again, that's not necessarily as important as association, the
right.
where we want to focus on. And if we can do that, I think we're going to be more successful and viewed better as such as well.
Yeah. And again, that's the benefit of the book. The book is, I don't know if when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, I forget whether we use this as the example, but the strip mall type approach of there's many different doorways in, but the building behind is your organization. So like a big restaurants, different doors. One
Right.
is the Chinese food door, the other one is the pizza door. And as people are walking past on the outside, they're going to get drawn to this campaign, and the campaign uses the language that resonates with them. But as they step through the door and they're welcomed in, the actual machinery in the
Mhm.
back is the same organization. It's just that you've gone to the extra step of tailoring that entrance point for that individual so they feel as comfortable as possible. And then you welcome them in when they come through the
Yep.
door.
Yep. And then after that, the ongoing relationship is critically important in how we provide service, how we are proactive in reaching out to people. It's amazing how
That's
many
a big
times I've
thing.
heard people say, well, yeah, I've never heard from my advisor for a long time,
Yeah.
or I don't hear from them unless I call them.
Yeah. Yeah. An annual
And
statement and a
that's
bill, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that personal connection and really providing great customer service,
Yeah.
is the way that I think will drive the process for referrals. And certainly if we can get our books out to our hands of our clients and they're happy with the process, happy with the customer service, they're more likely then to read and or pass that book on to somebody that they know,
Right.
that they care about as well.
They're the biggest fans because they're the people
Yeah.
who, all of that, the psychological elements you were talking about before, about the peace and the certainty that someone's taking care of them and their unknown questions are becoming
Yeah.
resolved,
Right.
to give them, rather than then have to kind of, I don't want to say taint the relationship, but then ask for, okay, you're feeling good about it. Now open up the phone book and give me some names and addresses. Instead,
Yeah.
to be able to
Well,
give them something that they can give to someone else. Like, it's value
yep.
first.
Value first, right? And
Yeah.
and we hope that, the concepts in the book are ones that we can then work with them through that service follow-up process to say, let's track the progress on these. How are we doing? How do we find some of those wins that we're trying to track as we move forward and celebrate the accomplishments? And that was one of the reasons why I got into this business. From my past, in my past, I actually, before I went and got a master's degree in business, which was a decision to go in the business route, I actually have a degree in microbiology and chemistry.
Oh, really?
And
Interesting.
yeah, I spent a number of years doing research and publishing papers. But the slow part about that was that, it could take a long time between you finish the work and do the research and go through peer reviews before it gets published, into a reputable journal. And with that, you kind of lose, and I felt that way, is that follow-up satisfaction that you made a
Right.
difference. And
Yeah.
matter of fact, you never know sometimes whether somebody picked it up and it led to some kind of therapeutic agent or some other research was taken a step further. You just know what you did and you move on. Whereas when
Yeah.
you're working with clients this way and it's an ongoing scenario, it's so rewarding to see them get to that point where you're helping them prepare. And over 22 years of business, I've seen a lot of kids raised by their parents and gotten through college. I've seen people go
Yeah.
from, you know,
I mean, you really see it
40 to
over that.
60 and
Yeah.
through their working years and into retirement, or some that are near retirement. Now they're older. It's just, you see a lot and that you know them very well. And so those are some deep standing relationships. And I think compiling all those nuggets of information that made a difference over the years. I know John has done the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of take those key things that we thought made it a difference and at least put them in a format that wasn't hard to read, but
Right.
there were important concepts that people can pick up from and go, yeah, this is the checklist I need to do, to help prepare for my retirement and the life that I envision. So
Yeah.
it's all part of our process of trying to get
Like,
started and organize it and get it out there.
like you say, if that information dies in your head and doesn't get into the hands or the ears of someone who could really benefit from it, then it's a little bit, what are we doing here? The opportunity to
Yeah,
resonate,
right.
knowing that you resonate with this person, someone else resonates with that person, giving them the framework to take the next step. Yeah, very important.
Yep. And I'm sure that the information's out there from other sources, but it's our take on it and our
Yeah.
experience with it and our stories. And so we thought that if we're trying to find the right types of clients that we can relate with and they can relate with us, and that we have a basis for having a business relationship, then at least we can use that as a process to at least start a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a key point. I think some people get hung up or kind of held back thinking, well, I've got nothing new or unique to say. But the reality
Yeah,
is that doesn't
yeah.
matter. The way that you say it is probably unique anyway, to some degree. The fact that you are saying it is absolutely unique. And the fact that you're saying it to that person at that time is completely unique because all of those different dimensions means that that person may not come across that information, even if it exists everywhere else. It's the fact that you say it to that person at that time. That's the culmination of
Yes.
the
Eh,
activity.
Yep. And eventually gets in their hands. Whereas otherwise,
Yeah,
like you said, it might not.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Time always goes fast on the podcast. It kind of flies by a little bit. I want to make sure that people can find out more about what you guys are doing and follow along. Where's a good place for people to check out? I know John was saying when we were talking the other day, you guys are in 22, 25 states. So it's definitely not just a Florida specific thing.
Well, that's just because, yeah, we are licensed. We have to do business in a variety of different places, connect with other advisors, and just trying to grow that way. But people can follow us on social media, which we have created that Clearview Wealth Management of Florida for our Facebook and our LinkedIn profiles. And of course, we encourage people to check out our website at the .com is MGNT, which is how the management is spelled.
Perfect.
And that is at least a place where someone can learn our mission statements, about us, our process, and the services that we provide and I think that is a way to connect with us too, because you can reach out.
Yeah,
There's many opportunities on our website for someone to leave their information so that we can then get back in touch with them, or they can email us.
fantastic. Well, I'll put links to the website and the social media channels down in the description of the show. So whether people are on the podcast player or on the website, just one, because I'll make sure that I link those. Terry, it's been fantastic. Goes so quick. It'd be great to circle back in later on this year and see how the book's going because it's always good to get. I often talk to people at this stage when the book's just created, but it's always great to circle
Yeah,
back later because
right.
there's often unexpected ways that it's being used and conversations that come from it. So it'll be great to circle back later in the year.
Yep, that sounds good, right? We have a process where we're trying to get the word out, and we'll see how that transpires with all our different efforts, and to reach out and to see how we'll get feedback on reviews and responses from it. So we just hope
Fantastic.
that it makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I haven't read it. I'm sure it will. Absolutely. Terry, thanks again for your time. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.